Okay, let's start with a really big question. How do you even begin to describe a being who is completely, totally unlike anything you know? I mean, think about it. That's the huge challenge that one of the oldest and largest schools of Islamic thought, the Hanafi school, really dedicated itself to answering. Today, we're going to walk through their solution. It's not just a list of rules, it's more like a really precise method for how to think about God.
Right. This is the core of it. Every single word we use, big, small, powerful, knowing, it's all tied to our physical, limited, created world. So how on earth can we use this same language to talk about a being who is eternal, infinite, and just completely beyond our comprehension? It seems impossible, right? Well, the Hanafi Creed offers a really fascinating way through this puzzle.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at how they define faith itself. Then, we'll dive into the idea of God's absolute oneness. After that, we'll explore the sort of intellectual guardrails they set up, get into the nature of the divine attributes, and finally, see how this all comes together in what they call a balanced middle path.
All right, so before we can even start talking about God, we have to get on the same page about what it actually means to believe. I mean, what is the substance of faith, according to this school of thought?
And right away, you can see just how precise this approach is. For them, faith, or iman, has two non-negotiable parts. First, a solid, unshakable conviction deep in your heart. And second, saying it out loud with your tongue. And this next part is so important, and it was a huge point of debate back in the day. They argue that this core belief itself is a constant. It doesn't go up or down. Your actions, your deeds, those can vary. But the actual root of your faith, that's fixed. Your actions are seen as the fruit of faith, not the root itself.
And what is that conviction directed at? Well, it's these 6 pillars. This isn't some kind of a la carte menu where you can pick and choose what you like. According to this creed, this is the whole package. It's the complete, indivisible structure of belief, covering everything from the unseen world of angels to the reality of the final judgment.
Okay, so with that foundation set, we can now get to the absolute bedrock of this entire system, Tawheed. This is the doctrine of God's absolute, uncompromising oneness. But let's be real. What does it actually mean to say that God is one?
This is such a critical distinction. When the Hanafi Creed says God is one, they don't mean it in a numerical sense, like one apple that could be followed by a second apple. That kind of one implies it's part of a set, which is a limitation. No, they mean one in the sense of being absolutely unique, a being with no partner, no parts, no divisions, and absolutely no comparison. Singular in a way that nothing else in existence is or ever could be.
And look, this isn't just some abstract philosophical exercise. It's anchored directly in the Quran. This short chapter is pretty much the definitive statement on who God is. The key word here is ahad. It's a special word. It doesn't just mean one. It means an indivisible, incomparable, absolutely unique one. It's a powerful statement against any idea of divine families, partners, or equals.
So, if God is absolutely unique, how do we stop ourselves from making massive mistakes when we try to talk about him? Well, that brings us to the next core principle, which is called tanzih. You can think of it as the set of intellectual guardrails that keep your belief on the right track.
The starting point is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly profound. God does not look like, act like, or exist like his creation in any way. Tanzih is the active process of declaring this. It means you are consciously and deliberately purifying your idea of God from any created quality you can think of, whether that's having a body, being in a physical place, or even changing over time.
And this is where you really see the genius of the Hanafi middle path. It very carefully steers the believer between two huge theological errors. Think of it like a road with 2 ditches. On one side, you have the ditch of tashbih, that's anthropomorphism, where you start describing God with human-like features. On the other side, you have the ditch of ta'til, where you go so far in the other direction that you deny his attributes altogether. The Hanafi Creed says, nope, we reject both of those extremes.
This verse from the Quran really is the final word on it. There is nothing whatsoever like unto him. That's about as absolute as a statement can get. So here's the challenge, right? How do you say that God has attributes like knowledge and power, which he does, while at the same time insisting that his knowledge and his power are completely and utterly unlike our tiny, limited versions of those ideas? And that question leads us straight into the next topic, the divine attributes. If God is nothing like his creation, then what can we positively say about him? Well, the Creed affirms that God possesses these perfect, eternal attributes that actually define what it means for him to be God.
So, the most important thing to get about these attributes is their nature. Just like God himself, his attributes are eternal. They have no beginning and they have no end. He didn't become knowing, he was always knowing. He didn't acquire power, he was always powerful. They don't change because any change would imply that he was imperfect before, which is impossible.
Okay, so let's run through a few of these essential attributes. You'll see a pattern here. His life is eternal, not temporary like ours. His power is absolute, without any restriction. His knowledge is all-encompassing. It covers the past, present, future, and even things that could never happen. And when the Creed talks about his hearing and sight, it's talking about perfect, all-encompassing awareness, completely free from the need for something like eyes or ears.
Now, the attribute of speech. This is one of the most subtle and honestly fascinating ideas in the whole Creed. The argument is that God's speech is an eternal quality, something that exists without sounds or letters or language. The best analogy is this. Think of an author who has the perfect, complete idea for a novel in their mind. That idea is the pure, uncreated essence. The physical book they write, with ink and paper and words, is the created expression of that idea. In the same way, the Quran that we hold and read is the created expression of God's eternal, uncreated speech.
And then you have a different category, the attributes of action. These describe what God does. He creates. He provides sustenance. He gives life and death. The key theological point here is that the attribute itself, the ability to create, for instance, is eternal. God was always the creator in his essence, even before a single atom of the universe existed. The action of creating happened in time, but the attribute of being the creator is timeless. So let's pull all these different threads together now. What we end up with is this incredibly coherent, logical, and balanced way of thinking and speaking about God, what is so often called the Hanafi's middle path. And this one sentence, it basically sums up the entire approach. It's the perfect motto for this whole theological framework. We affirm without likening. That means, yes, we confirm God has these perfect attributes, but we never ever compare them to our flawed human ones. And declare transcendence without denying. That means we insist he is completely beyond our world and our understanding, but we don't do that by erasing the perfect attributes that the revelation has told us about. And that really brings us to a final thought to leave you with. These ideas can feel pretty abstract, pretty high level, but their impact on a person's faith is profound. How does really internalizing a concept of God as absolutely unique, eternally perfect, and totally beyond all comparison, how does that shape your sense of awe? How does it shape your humility? And how might it change your daily relationship with the divine? That's definitely something worth reflecting on.